Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first meetup of 2024 and Happy New Year. Hope you enjoyed the holidays and great to see everyone here on Zoom and hope to meet some of you in person throughout this year. AI has definitely been a big topic in our group. Today, we're going to be talking about integrating AI into your content creation and optimization. With us is Brian Piper. Brian is Director of Content Strategy and Assessment at the University of Rochester. Brian is also co-author with Joe Polizzi of Epic Content Marketing Second Edition. And fun fact, Brian is a skydiver, and he's also a skydiving instructor. Pretty amazing. What Brian's going to talk today about, he's going to help us discover how we can leverage AI to assist with content creation, distribution, and optimization. From ideation to performance analysis, there are ways that AI can supercharge your content processes. Brian, thanks for joining and take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Dennis, and thank you to everyone for being here. Get a lot out of this group, so it's always great to be able to come in and give something back. So we are seeing AI integrated into all the tools that we use. And so whether or not we want to use AI, it is going to be available and accessible to all of us. And Rosemary's done an incredible job in some of her previous presentations talking about some of the different tools and some of the different ways to use AI. I'm going to expand on that a little bit and really focus just on the content creation part of it. And a lot of people are scared to use AI or nervous about using AI because they don't know how to use it. So I'm going to talk about a whole bunch of different use cases today and zero in on a few of them. But as Danielle said before, it's just a tool. It's just another tool in your toolbox, but it's the same with using tools. You don't want to use a hammer to drive in a screw because it's just not the right use. So it's all about finding the right tool for the right job. So Andy Crestodina from Orbit Media Studio did a survey among bloggers who create a lot of content, written content. And they're mostly using AI for the same things, the ones who are using AI. So 35% of the people he asks are not using AI, but most of them are using AI to generate ideas, to write headlines and outlines, and to write first drafts. And those are perfect uses for AI in the content creation process. Writing complete drafts is a horrible use of AI in the content creation process, because if you're copying and pasting from an AI tool into your public website or social, there can be a lot of problems because AI creation, I like to think of AI like a really smart intern. I love the ideas and the new way of thinking and the speed that they can work at, but I'm never going to take anything and just put it out there in the public. So I've been talking to content creators in lots of different communities that I'm in and across the higher ed landscape, and have come up with lots of different ways that they are using these AI tools. So it's not just ChatGPT. I'll walk through a variety of different AI tools, but obviously we don't have time to go through every one of these use cases. So I'm just going to highlight a few of them that are particularly impactful for us and saving us a lot of time. The important thing when you're starting to look at integrating AI into your workflows is to make sure you understand how much time you're spending doing different tasks without AI, and then see how long, once you figure out the process with AI, how long it takes you to do those same tasks with AI, and see if you're actually saving time. Because there are lots of ways you can just spend hours playing with these tools and looking at all the cool, fun things they can do. But if that doesn't translate into saving you time or making you more efficient or effective with your content, then you're wasting your time. So we write a lot of content from research. So we get a lot of really complicated research documents that come to us from scientists and researchers who are doing the work. And they'll give us this 15-page research paper that our content creators have to look through and make sense of and read. Then they have to go interview the scientists to make sure that they understand the process. So one of the things that ChatGPT is really good at is paraphrasing and interpreting those very technical documents. We were talking a little bit before we started about quantum computing. I actually saw an example of someone asking ChatGPT to explain quantum computing uh, at a fifth grade level using a baseball metaphor. And it actually worked really well. And it made a lot more sense to me because I don't understand quantum computing very well. So paraphrasing and interpreting technical content is really good at. Researching content is also a great thing that AI can do. Now, I like to use Perplexity AI for research because what it does is it goes out and it actually does an internet search for you and then returns the results in a generative feedback loop. So then you can ask it deeper questions about what it returned to you, but it cites all of the sources that it returns. So it's a fantastic tool. Um, and I also usually will use that in conjunction with Bing, Bard, and ChatGPT because they also have internet access. But Perplexity is much less likely to hallucinate or make up things. Whereas, because it only gives you um, output that it gets from websites, whereas the other tools take a little bit more leeway in how they return data to you, and sometimes they will make things up. So any information I get from Bing Bard or ChatGPT, I will always go out and double check that. The nice thing about Perplexity is it gives you the website and cites it right within the document so that you can then go and make sure to double check and make sure that the information it's giving you is accurate. One of the
Hey,
other
Ryan,
things, yep,
putting you on the spot a little bit, but are you willing to share your slides with the group afterwards?
you bet,
Okay,
absolutely, absolutely.
excellent. Thank you.
Um, Another thing that has really worked out well for us is creating user personas within ChatGPT. So when I was writing Epic Content Marketing, we interviewed um, Adele Ravel from the Buyer Persona Institute, who wrote the book on creating buyer personas. And they, within the last couple of years, have completely changed the way that they create personas. And there's really no replacement for doing all the in-person interviews that you need to do to create really solid, good personas. But ChatGPT can create a pretty solid persona that you can leverage in a lot of different ways pretty quickly. So we started playing around with this at the university and we just put in a pretty straightforward, simple prompt just to start off and say, just create the ideal persona for a potential undergraduate student. So we have a lot of different audiences that we're trying to connect with. We did a complete list one time. We had about 53 different audiences that we're trying to connect with at the university across the entire institution. So obviously we don't have the time or resources or finances to work with across the entire landscape to create personas for all of those different audiences. So ChatGPT can do a really good job of creating a usable persona. So we just started off with this, we put it to our website, and it gave us a pretty good base level persona. And then based on the information that we got from Adele, we expanded that and asked for more information about their priority initiatives, success factors, decision criteria, all sorts of other information that Buyer Persona Institute really focuses on to come up with useful personas. So it did a really good job of spitting those out. And then we were also able to look at personas that we have created in the past and double check and compare those. And of course, it can now create images of your personas. So it's always nice to put a face to the person that you're talking to. So that was a good start. We were able to use that as a launching point to see that we can actually create personas in ChatGPT. But then we wanted to take it a step further. So ChatGPT allows you to create custom GPTs. So you can build a GPT for a specific purpose. So we decided we were going to build Potential Pat the undergrad. So if you're a paid GPT Plus subscriber, you have access to build these custom GPTs. So basically, it asks you some questions about what you want this GPT to do for you. And So we gave it a whole bunch of guidelines within the configure settings of the GPT. And we put in all that information that it had generated about success factors and barriers. And then we also put in a bunch of information from our demographic studies that we do of our real students. So we put that information in there. So it had all of that in its data set. So then we went and took that GPT and started asking it questions like, what are your thoughts on our admissions page? And it looked through the page, it read the content, and then based on its criteria for decision making and what it was interested in as a potential undergraduate, it started telling us what it thought about the page. So then we started asking it more questions like, what other information should we include on this page? So now we're starting to really be able to change our content strategy based on what this AI persona is telling us is missing and what decision criteria would be most interesting to it. We asked if the language was easy to understand, if it was laid out the right way, if the user experience was good. We asked it a lot of questions and we really started getting some usable, applicable information from it. And then we started doing some competitive analysis. So we asked it to compare our page to different competitor admission pages. It gave us some really good information about what we were missing on our page or what, our competitors were missing on their pages. So that's been very helpful in the content creation process to get ideas of what sort of content we should create, what questions we should add to our website. So one of the main things, once you have your content, it's important to start thinking about where to put it and how to get it out there. We know that AI is having an impact on search. My kids are all college age, and we had a good conversation over the break about how they search for different things. And a lot of them are going right to ChatGPT or right to TikTok or to different communities that they're in. So they're searching differently. So it's important to have your content out there in all those places where your audience is. One of the things we say all the time in Epic Content Marketing is start with one platform because you just don't have time to be good on every platform. But these AI tools can help you figure out better ways to repurpose and reimagine your content for these different platforms. So I have a friend, it's an interesting business model that he has. He decided he was going to go out on his own and become a content creator. He takes tweets and LinkedIn posts from industry influencers, copies and pastes them into ChatGPT, asks ChatGPT to write him a TikTok script about that content, and then he does that verbatim from ChatGPT, puts it out on TikTok, and he just hit over 500,000 followers within like 3 months. Basically taking other people's content and having ChatGPT write that content out into a video script. So ChatGPT is definitely a good tool for repurposing and reimagining different ways to use your content. You can say, take this blog, turn it into 20 different social posts, turn it into a TikTok script, turn it into tweets or X's. I don't even know what you call those anymore. But so another good set of tools are Descript and Capsho. So Descript really, both of these tools work really well for video and podcasts. So video and audio editing and repurposing. So they can generate transcripts. They can do all sorts of different things within the actual like normal editing. But then there's other things that it can do. So say you're shooting a video and like a truck goes by in the background or the audio drops out for some reason, you can actually type in the words that the person should be saying. It will train the voice on that person's voice, and it will sync the new audio to their mouth movements. So you don't even need to have them saying those words audially, and then you can just replace that in post-production. So that's pretty impressive. And it can, it can do a lot of other things like that. It can remove backgrounds. It can take people, people in the background of your videos that you want out of your videos. It can take out, so it can do some pretty incredible things. It also does a great job. Both of these tools do a great job of generating show notes for podcasts, creating titles, making social posts and emails for your different episodes. Gloss AI and Opus Clips so if you have a webinar that you've done, you could use Gloss AI to go and grab the most important pieces of content out of that webinar and create short clips from those. So it will go through and decide what it thinks are the most important clips. It will create shorter clips of those. And Opus Clip does the same thing, but it does it in a vertical format so that then you can use those in social. And then HeyGen is a pretty incredible tool, especially if you have international offerings. So to demonstrate what HeyGen does, basically I took a video clip of myself, a short just headshot clip. I'm so excited about Can you hear that audio? Capabilities and opportunities these generative AI that's the English version of the clip. And then I just put it into
Estoy muy
HeyGen.
emocionado por las nuevas capacidades y
Now I speak
oportunidades
Spanish.
que estas herramientas de IA generativa.
I'm so excited about and
Ich bin so aufgeregt über die neuen Möglichkeiten.
It's in my
und Chancen,
voice,
die uns
and it
diese
syncs my
generativen
lips to the
KI-Werkzeuge
words and Korean.
이러한 이제
Wow.
생성 AI 도구들이 우리에게 제공하는
Oh my
새로운
God.
기능과 기회에
It's
대해
pretty
너무
incredible. And it does it really quickly. So lots of pretty amazing tools
Estoy
that
muy
can
emocionado por las nuevas
Sorry. Lots of different ways that you can use AI tools to help you figure out different ways to distribute and to share your content across different platforms, different mediums. But content optimization is kind of where I live. I'm a data person. I spend a lot of my time looking at how to make content perform better, either existing content, reactively, or new content proactively. So I'm going to kind of feature two different ways to do that. So one of the ways is to look at the data. So ChatGPT and some of the other AI tools can give you different ways of leveraging data that we haven't been able to do before or that have been time prohibitive. And I'll show you some examples of that. And then the other one is just different ways to save time. So content optimization is not just about making your content perform better, but it's making it easier for you to create that content in a shorter amount of time. So using these two different methods, I've managed to save months of time, months of work within the last probably 6 months, because I keep track of how much time I'm saving doing some of these things. And the first example I'm going to show you probably would have taken 5 or 6 months just to do that process that ChatGPT did in a matter of an hour or two. Most of the screenshots, I'll just say, that I use are not meant to be legible. They're just examples. So don't worry if you can't read them. Anytime we work on a new website or I do consulting, we always have this framework that we do for optimization. So we have a series of audits that we run on any content to figure out what's working and what's not and how it can be improved. Most of the time when a site that we've worked with before comes back to us, we just focus on two different audits. So the analytics audit and the search audit. So the analytics audit is just like, how well is your content performing online? And then the search audit is what's the potential of this content within, SEO within search engines. So we had the site Futurity that's part of the university. We run that out of the university, but it's an aggregation of all sorts of different research content from a lot of different universities. It's been up since 2013, I think, and it's got about 30,000 pages on it. So we needed to do an audit to figure out what content they could remove from the site, and then what the high performers are. So typically in the past, it's always been kind of difficult to get like the low performers. It's easy to get the high performers because you just run your Google Analytics, and you run your search audit, and then you take like the top I don't know, 10 or 15 entries from each of those audits, and you look at ways to optimize those. Normally, we can only do that many because we have limited resources and it takes a lot of time to actually go through all the different data sources. So when we start a process like this, we start by gathering the data. So we go to Google Analytics, but thanks to the migration to Google Analytics 4, you now have to go, since we wanted to look at the entire catalog of content, we had to also get Universal Analytics data and Google Analytics 4 data. So the Universal Analytics data looked at everything before like 2021, and the Google Analytics 4 is like 2021 on. And then we also look at Google Search Console. So that's where we get some of our search data. And then we look at SEMrush, which is where we figure out where all these sites are, where all these pages are ranking and what might have potential to rank higher, what we can optimize. So part of the problem of getting this data is that Google Analytics will only give you so many entries. So we wanted to get the entire list of all the entries so that we could find those bottom, those low performers. And in the past, it's always been difficult because Google Analytics will include like all the URLs that have like UTM codes, all those show up as different URLs. So it can be tricky to get like the low performers that don't have any search rankings. But what we were able to do was to take these and put these into Looker Data Studio. So when you connect data to Looker Data Studio, it will show you all of the entries for those different reports. So then you can right click on those and then you can save those out as, regular Excel files or CSV files. So we ended up with these 4 different really big Excel files that had all of our Universal Analytics data in it, all of our Google Analytics 4 data, all of our Google Search Console data, and then all of our SEO, SEMrush data. The only thing that we had to do was change the URL column so that the column header name was the same. So we named all of those columns page. And then we actually did change the GA4. It was just views, but we wanted to make sure it was obvious to us when we integrated those that these were the GA4 views. And then we also had exported from WordPress a complete inventory of all the pages on the site. So 30,000 pages on the site. Then we went to ChatGPT. I uploaded all 5 of those files and I just said, give me all the rows in the inventory document. So the list of all the pages that were on the site where the page entries aren't in any of the documents. So they haven't had any views. They've got no traffic and they have no ranking potential. And within a minute, it said there's 1,400 pages that you can immediately get rid of. So that right there, we hadn't been able to get that data before because the output from Google Analytics wasn't clean enough for us to go and look for 0 pages on that list. It doesn't even show you that there's no hits to those pages. But because ChatGPT could look at the inventory and say, oh, this page doesn't appear in any of these Google documents. It doesn't appear in any of these Search Console documents. It hasn't gotten any hits. It doesn't rank for any search terms. So right there, we knew that was an incredible savings. And then we just said, export that document. So it exported it. We were able to give the developers this list of IDs and they went in and deleted those pages. So then we started thinking, what are the other opportunities here? Because normally at this point, normally we just wouldn't even worry about, removing the old pages because we wouldn't be able to find them easily. So then we started thinking, well, we want to get a list of, normally we'll get a list of the high performing pages. Well, wouldn't it be cool if we could combine all of these documents into one master spreadsheet that would give us all of the information about search rankings and traffic to the pages and who the authors of those articles were and what schools they were associated with and all the information that came out of WordPress, what they were tagged with. So then we went back to ChatGPT and said, now we want to create a file with all the non-unique entries. So it's, looked through all of that and it said, there's too much. There's too much data. I can't do it. I can't process it. So because ChatGPT does have data storage limits in it, we were like, oh, well, now we got to figure out how to do this. We got this 30,000 row document. So I said, well, can you break it into smaller chunks? Break it into rows of 4,000 and then go on to the next column and then do that. And it's like, well, that didn't work either. Would you like to do it, with database-like joins to handle the data more efficiently or proceed with a smaller subset? I was like, I don't know, let's try the database joins since you recommended that. So it did. It went in and it was able to do that. It broke it out into chunks. It did the database joins. It gave me, it tried it at 4,000 and then immediately went and tried it at 2,000. So without me even having to tell it, it just went down and tried to optimize its process to give me the information that I wanted. And then it combined them into one huge CSV file. And I always say things like, you're amazing, thanks so much, because it is AI and we never know if it's not going to, eventually take over the world. So you want to be nice to it. So it took all of those files, combined them all together. And so then I said, well, now what I want to do is start bringing all of those additional columns from these other documents into this one master document. Because right now it was just the list of all the URLs. So then I said, can you add the additional columns from all the other documents? And it didn't like that. It hemorrhaged and stopped working. So sometimes you'll reach the limit in a single prompt where you just kind of hit the data limit. So I just went and created a new prompt. I took that big master document along with those other 4 files and said, now let's start doing this. But while you do it, show me your work. Because initially, what we always like to do is we now that we've done this a couple of times, now that what we'll do is we'll create a test document. So we'll have several different Excel files with like 5 or 6 rows in each one, and we'll test it to see if it integrates it properly and if the prompt that we're giving it is the right prompt. So we were able to do that and had it show its work. So we asked if it could, create additional columns for every entry and put it in there. And then we were able to see, I'm not a Python coder, but I can read code enough to kind of know what it's doing. So I was looking to see, was it pulling in the right columns? And then, it hit a memory error. So put it into a new, this is where we put it into the new prompt. And so then I did it one column at a time. Basically, I said, now take let's see what we did. We said, well, actually it was able to do the views and the UA views easily because there was only one column in each of those. But when we got to the SEMrush data, we had to add in the columns one at a time and name them so that it would create just that column. So, and it did, it created this huge document. So now we exported all of that. And so now we have this master document that we can go in and not just look for the highest performers, but we can look for the content that's the most strategic, the content that's just for individual institutions. We can look at all of the different categories and tags that we use to see which ones perform better. And if we'd have been trying to do that manually, it would have taken months of really painful time and work to get that done. So that has been a huge help to us in figuring out how to optimize large sites and how to figure out what content is performing well, has the opportunity to perform well if we optimize it for the right search terms, And it really helps us figure out strategically what content we want to focus on and prioritize. So then we have another project where, so one of our colleges, their communication team had done a bunch of interviews. They had done 10 hour-and-a-half long interviews with different deans and professors from within the school. And they were asking them all sorts of questions about, what sort of things were working for them, what their goals were, what the communications team could do to help them reach those goals, how they could support them. And so then they took all of those audio files and they put them into Otter AI, and Otter created the written transcripts of all those files. So then they were looking at, well, so the one woman that did all the interviews was trying to remember like the key points, the key messages. And she thought she had a pretty good idea of what some of them were, but she couldn't remember all of them. Obviously, this was, 15 hours of interviews. So they had these, 30-page documents that they were going to have to try to go through and figure out what the key messages were and who had said things. So they reached out to me and said, can AI help us with this? And so I took the documents. I tried taking all of them at once and loading them into ChatGPT, but it was too much data. So I was able to take one document at a time and give it enough information about that content and say, this is what we're trying to do with this document. This is what it contains. These are the people that are talking. Tell me what the themes are, what the topics are that are discussed in this, and give me a summary. And tell me what pages in the document are referring to those different elements. And it did an incredible job. So then I put the next one in and I said, do the same thing for the next interview. And so it did that for all 10 of those documents. And then I said, now take the main topics for all of these and create the 10 most topic themes and topics that were addressed, and then arrange them in priority by which ones were talked about the most, and then indicate the number of times that each of those was talked about. And going back and looking at the manuscripts and looking at the pages that it had flagged, a lot of times the messaging in there didn't actually use the words that it had included it in that topic, but it was talking about those terms and it was talking about that particular subject. So it was pretty incredible how it knew that even though, this was talking about, diversity and inclusion, even though they didn't use those words in that particular, paragraph or portion of the interview. So then I said, they didn't ask me for this, but I said, all right, now come up with 10 to 15 actions that could be taken by the school to help address these concerns. And most of them were not great, but there were probably 5 or 6 in there that were really good, that were actionable, that the communications team could take back to the deans and professors and propose different ways that they could help them. And the great thing about, these AI tools is if none of those were good, I could just say, give me 50 more, give me 100 more, and it'll spit out more ideas and just keep giving you different tactics that you might be able to use to help you solve your problems. And this was also right about the time where they had integrated DALL-E into ChatGPT. So now you have the ability to create images. So I decided, let's just try and see if it can actually create like a chart that will show, or a dashboard that will show a high level view of, the findings from all these interviews. So I asked it to do that and it did a horrible job. And none of these charts are really usable or helpful. But I think it's a matter of time before we get there. We're already seeing better uses of charts to help you interpret your data from these different tools. So that's all I've got from the presentation standpoint, but I would love to answer any questions or to hear other ways that, other people are hoping to use these tools or thinking about using these tools, because talking to all sorts of different creators and business people and, higher ed professionals and marketers, lots of different opportunities out there.
Thanks, Brian. We have a question from the chat that just relates to what you were just showing with with those documents. It's from, I hope I'm pronouncing right, Srinivas. Can ChatGPT read video files, and can it also read web URLs?
It cannot read video files yet, but Bard can read YouTube content. So Bard can actually search through video content, and then you can get information out of that. It can give you time codes in videos if you have videos that don't have like time code captions at the bottom or something like that. So I've been using Bard a lot to, optimize or to figure out different ways to, summarize YouTube content. And what was the other question? URLs. Yes, ChatGPT can access URLs and read the content from web pages.
And then, Brian, there was some discussion in the chat about, you had the example, I think it was Hey Jen, about your voice and translating to different languages. So there was some a chat going back and forth about the accuracy of translation. So Cheryl asks, is there a way to verify how accurate the translations are? It was always an issue when I was involved in translating content. Sometimes our translations were not accurate for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And there has been, anytime you use any sort of AI translating tool, definitely have to have a native speaker listen to it and make sure that it's accurate. I think HeyGen offers that as a additional service within their within their offerings, where you can actually have a human make sure that the transcription that it generates is accurate.
Excellent. And you're currently getting a lot of compliments in the chat, Brian. So
Awesome.
kudos.
Oh, always a pleasure.
Patrick asks, is there a potential for bias in creating content from personas? And if so, how could that be addressed?
Yes, absolutely. So we know that these data sets tend to be biased because of how they're trained and the content that they're trained on. So always important to look at any output from these. And it's interesting when you use ChatGPT, when you use DALL-E to create images, it will show you the prompt that it actually gives to the generation tool to create the image. So you may put in, create an image of a student sitting in a classroom. If you did that in Midjourney, it would generate the image from that exact prompt. And I would say 8 times out of 10, it's going to be a Caucasian person. But if you do that in ChatGPT, a lot of times it will change that prompt to say, create an image of a diverse or mixed race person or something like that in a classroom. So it will intentionally add diversity into its prompts sometimes, not always. So it's interesting that these tools, the creators of these tools recognize that that's a problem, that's an issue, and they're trying to figure out ways to address it, because the content that they're trained on is, biased to begin with. Good question.
And then, Brian, I was curious, navigating organizationally, like within the university. So you have a boss, your boss has a boss. With all of these AI tools you were using, did you have to get approval, or was there any, or were you able to just independently use them, or did you have to bring it up the chain to say, we're experimenting with AI?
Well, thanks to the VMware folks that you've had in here giving presentations, we are currently in the process of creating a marketing AI council. And we have a generative AI policy internally that was put out. So now we're working on a public facing one that we're using. We also have an academic AI policy for some of the different schools. So leadership is starting to recognize that this is something that needs to be moderated and governed. We need to have guidelines around what sort of data we can put in there. Everything that I've done on my personal ChatGPT. We don't have an enterprise ChatGPT subscriptions yet. So I've done it on my personal ChatGPT and tested things out there. I made sure that any data or any files that I upload to it have no personal information in there. We did a survey, and I took a survey and did kind of the same thing that we did with the transcriptions. We had open-ended questions to 1,000 people in a survey that we were trying to manually cobble together. So I was able to take just the column of open-ended questions and put that into ChatGPT and have it create summaries from that. So yes, absolutely need guidance, need guardrails. But the university is in the process of creating those. But like everything in higher ed, it does not move quickly.
Got it. Got it. Thought I'd call on Rich or Rosemary. Do either of you have anything to add or ask about?
Sure. So great presentation. Thanks very much, Brian. So when you're doing these examples, I'm assuming you have a pretty extensive custom instruction set up, or are you turning that off?
No, I use custom instructions. Yes. And I love once they added that, I loved it because then I didn't have to put in every prompt. You're an expert in this, or I just said in my custom instructions, you're an expert in everything, which they've said now that doesn't really give you better results, but it still seems to, even if it's a placebo, it works for me. So
no, it definitely, I've done side-by-side tests. It 100%, especially
right?
if you ask it to give follow-on questions, because it then gets you thinking about what you've missed.
Right. And I did, that was another GPT that I created as a prompt writer. So it basically just keeps asking me questions. I tell it what prompt I want to create, and it just asks me for more details and who the audience is and what you're trying to do with this prompt. So then by the time I've got like this huge, massive prompt that has all this information in it, and then I put that into ChatGPT and I get a much better output from that.
If I could, my question is kind of related. Thank you, Brian, for the presentation today. Around, you made a joke. I might as well be polite since it might take over the world, right? I for one welcome our new overlords, and so I asked GPT-4, hey, if my prompts for ChatGPT are more polite, please, thank you. So, well, I received better results, and the answer is interesting in that the quality of responses you receive isn't directly influenced by the politeness of your prompts, but using please and thank you, there are three sort of indirectly contribution to better interactions. It said clarity of requests. Polite prompts often include more clear and structured language, which can help the AI better understand your request. Specificity. When you're polite, you're more likely to be specific, thoughtful about what you're asking, leading to more precise answers. And then third, misinterpretation and avoidance. So polite language tends to avoid aggressive or ambiguous phrasing. Again, a Google search, and there's all sorts of discussion as will it affect it or not, but I just went right to my chat GPT-4 and asked it. So while it says, while the prompt response was, in summary, while politeness itself doesn't change the AI's capability to respond, clear and well-structured communication, which often accompanies politeness, can lead to more effective and accurate responses. So has that been your experience?
Yeah, and actually I saw some interesting side-by-side comparisons where people offered to tip ChatGPT if it gave
like financial tip, like
yeah, like I will tip you. I will give you a financial tip, which can't really do. But it would give longer responses when you offered to tip it.
huh. Maybe that's an Easter egg from the
right
OpenAI people, right?
And Rosemary, that was a great I think it was the Salesforce survey that they did where they said like 90% of people are already using ChatGPT in their job or some sort of AI without permission. So
right.
these businesses need to start looking at training and making sure that people are thinking about data security and privacy and those things.
But there's also the issue that employees don't want to confess that they're using this, right?
Right.
It's so weird to me. So I see a lot of that. People are kind of worried about that. So
yeah, Bob, that's a good comment, Bob. If you tell the AI, and they're even saying that if you tell the AI to take more time and be more thoughtful. So that's another thing that I put in my custom instructions is to take your time with the response and, think about this in a step-by-step process, and show your work is another thing that I ask it to do. So, and that does actually result in better output.
Hey, Brian, earlier on the personas, you showed how ChatGPT generated the image of the person.
Yep.
We have a question. I tried to get ChatGPT to create images and it does not. How did you get it to produce images?
Yeah, so you have to have GPT Plus. So you have to have the paid version of it. And it used to be that you used to have to go into your settings and make sure that Dolly was selected. But I think by default, it's selected now.
Yes, it's by default.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you expect it to search the web, it doesn't, and you have to prompt it to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a ton of custom plugins also now that you can do all sorts of. I was talking to Old Dominion University, and they had this awesome integration with ChatGPT and their CRM and Zapier. So previously, what they would have to do at like job fair events or student fairs, they would have to have the student fill out a form. And then once they got back to their office, they would take all those forms and put them in their CRM. And then they would initiate the drip campaign and figure out what emails went to all those students. And so then they set it up with Zapier, where as soon as they submitted the form at the job fair, it would go and Zapier would push it into their CRM. And then ChatGPT would look at all the selections that they had made and create a personalized custom email that would immediately go out to them and start their drip campaign. Pretty impressive.
Wow. Okay, we have a question from Daz or Daz. Can you address watermarked content and how we would work with it or even know if it is watermarked?
Yeah, I mean, copyright issues are a huge thing. We saw the New York Times lawsuit recently. So detecting AI generated content, not really a good way to do it. They're looking at, the different companies that are creating these AI tools are saying that they could identify content created from their tools, but until they actually start putting invisible watermarks on the content, which they're talking about doing, there's really no way you wouldn't. That's one of the reasons you don't want to copy and paste. You don't want to use the images if you're worried about people stealing them, because no one actually owns these images currently. So yeah, but you can use like Adobe's Firefly will remove watermarks really easy from images now. I mean, the AI tools within Adobe are pretty incredible. There's no more like rubber stamping or cloning to get to cut up images or to remove backgrounds. You just push a button and say remove the background or move this person or take this person out of the image, and it just generates the new background right away. I think that answers your question. I hope it does. If not, let me know.
So we have time for 2 more questions. Maybe I'll ask one and then we'll have time for one more. Brian, what are your go-to sources, whether it's websites, newsletters, communities, for staying current on AI?
Marketing AI Institute is, from week to week, I have found no better resource, especially, all the information they've had about creating AI councils and AI policies and all of that. I'm in several other creator communities where we have a lot of AI discussions. This group is fantastic. There's been some great presentations in here. And then a ton of different newsletters. So
Any particular newsletter that comes to mind that you would recommend?
TLDR AI is a good one.
Excellent. All right, we have time for one more. Anyone have any questions? Let me check the chat. Feel free to also unmute yourself and ask a question.
Sure, I'll ask a question for Brian because I don't know the answer either. And in tests, I can't really tell. So, there's all this, OpenAI tells you to use correct spelling, correct grammar, and all of this. But I've seen it make no difference whatsoever. Have you seen anything?
No, it seems to do a pretty good job of interpreting poor grammar, and I haven't seen it give me different responses when I notice that I, made a mistake or I look at something. I'm like, I could ask a person that and they wouldn't understand what I was saying, but ChatGPT can somehow understand what I'm saying.
And just to follow up that question about the best resources, I love the AI Exchange. It's about $150 a year. And one useful thing, this guy, Ethan Mollick, is awesome. Maybe he posts once every 1 or 2 weeks, but it's totally worth a read.
Definitely. He's a great, excellent resource. Yeah, and if
All right,
anybody
well-
else has any questions, feel free to connect with me, and always glad to talk AI or content.
Yeah, thanks so much for the presentation, Brian. Great job.
Thanks for having me.
We will resume in 2 weeks, so everyone can check our meetup page. Rich just posted in the chat about Jeremiah Aoyang.
He's
He's
presenting, right? He's coming up
Yeah,
soon.
he's coming up in 2 weeks. Jeremiah is a venture capitalist who invests in AI companies, and he's going to talk about, I think the title is like how marketers can prevent AI from
taking their customers.
Taking
Yeah,
their
I'm looking for
customers.
the
Taking your
link. Yeah.
customers.
Yeah, if you're not following Jeremiah, he's pretty active on X. I almost said Twitter, Threads, etc. Good insights. He's not a hype person at all. Like very kind of pragmatic takes. So, and a friend of the meetup, member of the meetup.
That's right.
Hey, thanks, Brian. This is great.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate the opportunity.
All right, thanks everyone. Yeah, thanks Brian. Thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye bye.